Hi, I'm Ken Hagen from Left Bank Whiskey. I'm going to briefly explain how we make Left Bank bourbon and what makes it honest to God unique in a market full of quality bourbons. First, I'm going to start with the name. Left Bank is from a nautical term referring to both Louisville and most of New Orleans, being on the left bank of the river system as you float down it. That's important to us and puts our interest in the history of bourbon right at the forefront of our brand and identity. Now, bourbon itself. 20% of the flavor of mature bourbon comes from the raw ingredients. The mash bill, the yeast used in fermentation, the water, the distillation process. There's a lot of consistency across the industry in this area. We work with great distilleries to get us already aged bourbons where all these parts are done consistently and right. It's aging where we differentiate ourselves from other bourbons. Over 80% of the flavor of a bourbon comes from this. And this is where we can make our product truly unique from any other bourbon you'll find on the shelf or behind the bar. First, we add our own blend of staves to the barrels to help shape their flavor profile during the river journey. We're not breaking the rules of straight bourbon. We're adding oak from the same companies who make the barrels used throughout the industry. After hundreds of prototype batches and blends, we landed at a combination of 3 different staves for Left Bank bourbon. All of our Left Bank expressions will combine these 3 staves and potentially some unstaved mature bourbon to keep the product perfectly balanced. You might ask, how do you add those staves? Here's how. You'll note at the end of the video, the staves are attached to the bung so we can remove them at the right time. If we leave these in too long, the bourbon will pick up too much woodiness in its flavor and may sour. There can be too much of a good thing. What effect does the stave finishing have? These next slides show the presence of several common compounds bourbons get from interacting with the wood during aging. First, we have a barrel with no staves added, just regular number 4 alligator char. The first stave we do use is heavily charred American oak that isn't toasted. The charcoal actually tones down some of the flavors while adding some smoke and spice notes. The second stave adds considerably more of the vanilla and caramel notes whiskey pick up from aging. Flavor as a whole starts to expand from the center of the chart up into sweeter areas. This stave alone would be a lot of flavor, but might also be too sweet by itself without being balanced out. The third stave we use gets us all the way into the savory area. Again, by itself, this stave has a lot going on. But the barrels we've aged from this have prominent and strong flavors that could be a little bit heavy by themselves without blending. So it's when we blend them all together that the magic happens. That orange line around the center of this chart puts us at a bourbon that is almost perfectly balanced along the flavor wheel. This is how we make a product unlike any other bourbon and how we're able to do this consistently release after release by using the same staves. The other truly unique thing we do is finishing our aging process with a one-way journey down the river system. This is how bourbon got its start, and Left Bank wants to honor this history with every release. We start at a warehouse in Kentucky where we load our barrels onto pallets and then into a secured container. Our whiskey floats for 8 to 14 days down the river systems and finds its way to Louisiana port just outside of New Orleans. The barges then are unloaded at a container port and our barge is trucked to our New Orleans facility. When the barrels arrive at our New Orleans facility, we remove the extra staves and take samples from each barrel. From these samples, we begin the difficult process of tasting the whiskey and turning it into our Left Bank expressions. Most of the barrels of Left Bank end up in one of our small batches. A small batch for us is 8 or few barrels, not 200 barrels. It's very, very small. We combine 8 or few barrels into one batch to find something that's perfectly balanced and also has its own presence as a batch. This tasting is done via focus groups in Louisiana, Kentucky, Illinois, and other states. We use bourbon heads and whiskey drinkers, beer drinkers, hard seltzer aficionados, and wine enthusiasts to round out our panels and make sure we're making whiskey that appeals to a wide audience of consumers. After we identify the batches and which barrels go into them, we do another round of focus groups to find the perfect proof for each batch. This ensures that each batch is bottled at its own specific sweet spot. Perfect out of the bottle, ready for cocktails, ready to be sipped neat, and completely open to a couple of ice cubes if that's how you roll. This is the story of Left Bank Bourbon and how we make an absolutely unique bourbon. I hope you liked it. Like and follow us online. Check out our website to keep up to date on where you can find us on shelves, and check our social media for when we're doing tastings and events in your neighborhood. Thanks.